wild fantasies arose in his mind, and he saw Samwise the Strong, hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across the darkened land.
Jesus.
And armies flocking to his call as he marched to the overthrow of Barad-dûr.
Oh my
He
God.
had only to put on the ring and claim it for his own, and all this could be.
Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be checking out the complete history of the Rings of Power by Nerd of the Rings. Yes guys, this was recommended to me by our Prefect Fyr, so big thank you to you Fyr for this week's recommendation. Now, yeah, I don't know a whole lot about Rings of Power. If you have seen my previous Nerd of the Ring videos, you'll know that I haven't seen the Rings of Power on Amazon. I have not seen that show. I hear very mixed things about it. I'm not sure if it's worth my time to watch it. People either say it's not worth the hate or they absolutely despise it, I think. And I'm not sure how true, I guess, to the actual Tolkien lore, I guess it is, and I think that's why people might have a problem with it. Nerd of the Rings here, so far from what I know, absolutely is strong on that Tolkien lore. It's the most true to Tolkien's lore I think you can get. So yeah, I think it's awesome that he continues these videos. This was 10 months ago. This is actually a more recent one from him, I think, that we've checked out. So yeah, I'm going to be excited what it has in store for us. If you guys enjoy, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe for more content from me, of course. Leave your recommendations down in the comments below, what you guys want to see next. And of course, big thank you to all of our members. Now, without any further delay, we're going to leave a like on this video. Captions are on. Quality 1440p. Love it when we see it.
For
Full
the
screen.
elven...
Oops. Full screen. Without any further delay, let's get it.
3 rings for the elven kings under the sky. 7 for the dwarf lords in their halls of stone. 9 for mortal men doomed to die. 1 for the Dark Lord on his dark throne. In the land of Mordor, where the shadows lie.
Right.
1 ring to rule them all. 1 ring to find them. 1 ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them.
Damn.
In the land of Mordor,
Still goes hard.
where the shadows lie. Today on Nerd of the Rings, we're taking a compiled look at the history of every ring of power. We begin our journey by looking...
I will say that will... Oops. Sorry, just changing the volume there, I guess. I will say it will be interesting to see the... I'm sure this is going to cover like the creation of the Rings of Power. I think that's going to be really cool to look into because I think you hear a brief snippet about it in the movie, but you don't really like obviously see in depth what's all entailed in that. So for him to actually explain that, I think that's going to be a really cool thing.
History of every ring of power. We begin our journey by looking at the greatest of rings for the free peoples, and those Sauron coveted most after their creation, the 3 elven rings. Around 1200 of the Second Age, Sauron, in his fair form of Anatar, begins working to corrupt the elves. He gains a foothold in Eregion, infiltrating the realm and working with the Gwaith y Myrdain, a brotherhood of great elven craftsmen,
Pronounce that
led
10
by
times
their lord
fast.
Celebrimbor, the greatest elven smith since his grandfather Feanor.
Okay.
These Noldorian smiths had a desire to bring the joys...
And if I recall too, elven smiths are fucking just as goated as like, you know, like dwarven ones almost, if I recall them. More magically imbued things, if I recall. Don't they make like mithril now? I could be wrong. I don't want to misspeak too much, but I'm pretty sure they're just as goated, if not more, arguably.
Father Feanor. These Noldorian smiths had a desire to bring the joys of Valinor to Middle-earth, making them particularly susceptible to Sauron's deception. He teaches them the manner of creating the Rings of Power, with the promise that they would slow the decay of the world, preserving the things they cared for, and enhancing their power.
Interesting.
Sometime in the next 300 years,
Second Age.
the elves forge lesser rings, what Gandalf calls mere essays in the craft. These rings were plain and had no jewels, similar in appearance to the One Ring at a glance, partially explaining why it was assumed for many years that Bilbo's was one of these lesser rings. Finally, in 1500, the Gwaith y Myrdain...
That makes a lot of sense, because I never understood like why, because Gandalf, like at least in the Hobbit film that I've seen, right? He definitely saw it, right? And he was like, yeah, I mean, he's like, what the fuck? Yeah. And then in the start of the Lord of the Rings, you know, you see it him actually start to do stuff about it, right? Of course, and we've seen, you know, the travels of Gandalf and what all he did with it and whatnot, but then I guess that makes a lot of sense. He just thought it was some lesser like throwaway ring. Not throwaway, I guess that's the wrong word, but not the one ring. Like it could be the ring, right? No, it fucking is. Who knew, right? And I guess, you know, hindsight's a bitch, right? That's kind of the problem.
Was one of these lesser rings. Finally, in 1500, the Gwaith y Myrddin began forging the Great Rings of Power. Together with Sauron's help, they forged 16 Great Rings, which we'll cover in videos of their own.
Ruby and sapphire
Sauron
rings
leaves
down.
Eregion, heading to Mordor to forge his greatest of rings. During this time, Celebrimbor and his elves forged 3 rings of their own, the Elven Rings of Power. Having been created without Sauron's help, these 3 rings are free from his corrupting influence.
Now, I don't know if that's like exactly what they look like or not, but if so, damn. Even not, like they're still nice rings. I just see the 925 there. Maybe this is a replica ring that somebody made. It could be.
Sauron's help, these 3 rings are free from his corrupting influence. The 3 rings are named after the 3 elements of water, fire, and air. Nenya, the ring of water, is made of mithril with a stone of adamant and is considered the chief of the 3. Narya, the ring of fire, has a ruby setting, and Vilya, the ring of air, is made of gold with a stone of sapphire. While Nenya is the chief ring,
White
Tolkien
gold?
says Vilya is the mightiest of the 3.
Really?
It just so happens that the 3 elven rings...
It's the mightiest because you can't breathe without fucking air. No, I don't know. That's interesting though.
is the mightiest of the 3. It just so happens that the 3 elven rings, important objects of the Second and Third Ages, have a connection to the Silmarils, incredibly important objects from the First Age. The elements of the rings, water, fire, and air, correspond with the fates of the 3 Silmarils.
Okay.
One is cast by Maglor into the sea at the end of the First Age. One, Maitros took with him as he cast himself into a fiery chasm around the same time. And the third is worn upon the
Wow,
brow
he went
of
out, didn't he? Damn.
Eärendil, and is in the sky as a great star.
Oh,
In
wow.
1600 of the Second Age, Sauron creates the One Ring, and putting it on, his treachery is revealed to the elves, who take off their rings. Celebrimbor...
So the second he did that, the elves were instantly onto that shit, and they're like, yeah, no. Yink. Like, yeah. Man, good on the elves. And interesting, too, that Sauron himself, I guess, created this, right? So he didn't have, like, a lackey or, like, somebody wasn't tricked into doing it. He physically created this himself. And I guess that kind of makes sense, too, why it's so unsuspecting in a sense. Not adorned with anything. It's maybe just a gold plain ring. You know what I mean, for lack of a better word, but it's got that inscription on it, and I guess that inscription is fucking, that's the shit you gotta worry about, you know? Damn.
His treachery is revealed to the elves, who take off their rings. Celebrimbor, perceiving Sauron's mind, sends the 3 rings to other great elves to keep them from falling into Sauron's hands. He sends the chief of the 3 to Galadriel, who is now living in Lothlorien. She advises him to send the other 2 to Lindon, further away from Sauron.
That makes sense.
They are sent to the High King Gil-galad, who takes Vilya himself while giving Narya to Círdan the Shipwright. By 1697, Sauron has laid waste to Eregion and sacked its capital of Ost-in-Ithil. He seizes control of the 16 Rings of Power, but cannot find the 3. Regarding the 3 rings, Tolkien states, "Of all the elven rings, Sauron most desired to possess them, for those who had them in their keeping could ward off the decays of time and postpone the weariness of the world." In his deep desire to obtain the
So the elven rings were just kind of goated, I guess, in a sense. I'm sure he's going to get into the other... Yeah, okay, so he's got... I see. So we're in the elven rings. He's got the dwarf ring. Okay, so he is going to get into the other rings too. Okay. This is a compilation of all. Okay, yeah, makes sense. Okay. I have to say, though, definitely seems like these rings potentially could have been the most goated, the most sought after. And that just goes to do with the elves in general. Elves, I think in most like high fantasy settings, elves are just fucking better than everyone else. Like just straight up that racial bias, man. It's there, for lack of a better word, with the elves a lot of the time. But Kind of makes sense, you know, they live forever. The knowledge that a single elf could have over potentially anyone else is a lot longer. And I say forever, right? They don't, you know what I'm saying, right? Over like a basic man or even a dwarf. I think dwarves also live a bit longer. I'm not really too sure on that in terms of the Tolkien setting, but definitely, you know, elves are outlasted man by quite a bit, you know. So the amount of knowledge they possess can pass down over time is just so much greater than anything that humans, or I'm assuming by the definition of that, dwarves could ever do, right? Or any other race for that matter.
And postpone the
Besides, of course, on the west, when we're talking about the other continent, that's a whole other ball game, of course.
Them in their keeping could ward off the decays of time and postpone the weariness of the world. In his deep desire to obtain the three, Sauron tortures Celebrimbor to determine their hiding place. Celebrimbor, however, would reveal nothing to the Dark Lord and is put to death.
Damn.
While Círdan and Galadriel would continue to possess their rings, Gil-galad would pass his on to Elrond prior to the War of the Last Alliance.
Okay.
In this war, Gil-galad would fall alongside Elendil as they defeat Sauron. While the loss of the High King is a tremendous blow to the elves, with Sauron defeated and his ring taken by Isildur, they are free to once again use their three rings of power. Galadriel with Nenya would make Lothlorien into a great and beautiful realm, harkening back to the days of old. Meanwhile, Elrond would return to Rivendell, which would be a safe haven for thousands of years. Círdan remains in Lindon, specifically the Grey Havens, where he would possess the Ring of Fire for the next 1,000 years. In that year of 1000 of the Third Age, emissaries of the Valar would arrive in Middle-earth in order to help the men and elves combat the resurgent threat of Sauron. As Círdan meets Saruman the White, Radagast the Brown, and Gandalf the Grey, he gives his Ring of Power not to the leader Saruman, but to Gandalf, perceiving that the wizard would have great use for such a ring in his journeys and duties. Take this ring, master, for your labors will be heavy, but it will support you in the weariness that you have taken upon yourself. For this is the Ring of Fire, and with it you may rekindle hearts in a world that grows chill. This statement from Círdan alludes to a unique ability of this ring. Narya, now carried by Gandalf, is said to have the power to inspire others to resist tyranny, something we see Gandalf do quite often, perhaps no greater a situation than in the Siege of Minas Tirith. Nenya, Galadriel's ring, as it is said of all elven rings, enables her to preserve Lorien from the decay of time. However, its power seems to go beyond that. With Nenya, Galadriel is able to make Lorien into a great and beautiful realm that harkens back to the great realms of old in Valinor. We even hear of this ring being helpful in protecting Lorien from later attacks by orcs, for Lorien would be attacked from Dol Guldur while war was marching upon Minas Tirith, with Galadriel expelling the orcs each time. As for Vilya, we are never directly told of a specific power, aside from the general ability of preservation, allowing Rivendell to become a great refuge of its own. Knowing that it is considered the greatest of the three, there are many great theories on what this could have meant. Perhaps it was similar to Galadriel's, allowing Elrond to keep Rivendell safe from would-be attackers, perhaps evidenced at the ford of Bruinen. Another great possibility is that it enhanced its wearer's natural gifts of wisdom and healing, perhaps aiding Elrond in treating the wounds Frodo receives from the cursed blade of the Witch King.
Bro, Frodo looks fucking shell-shocked in that picture. Holy shit, dude. Oh my god, he's seen some shit.
Elrond in treating the wounds Frodo receives from the cursed blade of the Witch King. While the three rings were not connected to the one in the same way as, say, the Nine, which enabled Sauron to enslave men into ring wraiths, their powers were still connected. Since these rings were still made using the techniques the elves had received from Sauron, they could not be wholly separate from the ruling ring. Thus, when the One Ring is destroyed and Sauron is finally defeated, the power of the three rings begins to fade. Their power gone, the rings are nothing more than mere relics of a bygone age. No longer having the ability to preserve the lore and beauty of their realms, Elrond and Galadriel go with Gandalf to the Grey Havens. The three rings and their bearers would take the White Ship and sail into the west, ending the Third Age and ushering in the Fourth. As the dominion of men begins, the time of the elves and their rings comes to a close. But what of the 16, which Sauron stole from Eregion? Next, we turn our attention to the 7, with my video on the Dwarven Rings. By 1600 of the Second Age, Sauron and the Gwaith y Myrdain have created 16 great rings of power, the 7 and the 9. As mentioned in my previous video on the Elven Rings, Celebrimbor would keep the 16 in Eregion until his realm falls to Sauron in 1697. After capturing and torturing Celebrimbor, Sauron claims the Rings of Power for his own use. Now, there is some discrepancy on how many of these rings were still around at the time of the fall of Eregion. In some accounts, like in the Silmarillion, it implies that when Sauron destroys Eregion, he claims 16 rings. However, in the appendix of The Lord of the Rings, we find out that the 3 elven rings were not the only ones Celebrimbor gave away. In this account, we are told that Celebrimbor gives one of these rings to his friend King Durin III of Khazad-dûm. This would mean that the Dwarven ring we know the most about was never actually given by Sauron. But we'll get back to that particular ring in a minute. Sometime after the fall of Eregion, Sauron gives the 9 rings to men, and the remaining rings to the dwarves. It is believed that the 7 dwarf lords who possessed the rings were the 7 kings of the 7 clans: the Broadbeams, Firebeards, Ironfists, Stiffbeards, Blacklocks, Stonefoots, and Longbeards. It's possible that Sauron intended these rings to have a similar effect as the 9 would have on men, turning them into wraith slaves in servitude to the Dark Lord. However, the rings would not have this effect on the dwarves. It would not even turn their wearers invisible. Instead, these rings would simply amplify the wearer's natural skills. The dwarves used their rings to amass wealth, bringing about the 7 great treasure hoards. However, as they amass wealth, the rings also feed their greed and wrath, which would indirectly be beneficial to Sauron.
So so the rings just make the dwarves just better at fucking being dwarves. They just collect so much shit. They're just great dwarves. But then they get that that treasure madness that we kind of see. You know what I mean? The greed goes too far. They become addicts for it, you know? Damn. I see.
Greed and wrath, which would indirectly be beneficial to Sauron. Being one of the more secretive races, we actually don't know where the 7 hordes of the dwarves were. However, we can guess that some may have coincided with the areas where the great dwarf fathers awoke in the earliest days of the world. We also know of a couple specific instances of great dwarf hordes that are overtaken by dragons. The earliest is Scatha the Worm, who plunders a great dwarf treasure in the Grey Mountains. This would be the great hazard of the dwarven hordes. In fact, we are told that no less than 4 of the dwarven rings of power are either swallowed or destroyed by dragons.
Really?
2 others were recovered by Sauron. The most famous and final surviving ring was the very same that was given to Durin III of Khazad-dûm. It would be passed down the line of the kings of Durin's folk until it comes to Thror, the grandfather of Thorin Oakenshield, who would recolonize the realm of Erebor. This comes after they are driven from the Grey Mountains by the dragons of the north. With his ring and the Arkenstone, Thror leads his people to Erebor, and the realm to great prosperity. As seen time after time in the history of the dwarves and their rings of power, the great treasure hoard of Erebor attracts the attention of a dragon. Not just any dragon, but the greatest of all the Third Age, Smaug. After Smaug takes control of the mountain, Thror, with his ring and his people, goes into exile. As they settle in the lands of Dunland, Thror's ring would pass to Thorin's father, Thrain. After coming to settle in the Blue Mountains, Thrain would embark on a journey in an attempt to reclaim Erebor in 2841. 4 years later, he would be separated from his company and captured by the servants of Sauron. They take the king to Dol Guldur, where Sauron tortures him and reclaims the Ring of Thror, the final of the 7 rings taken from Dwarven control.
I see.
Though we do know that Sauron's messenger sent to Erebor offered King Dain these 3 rings and the realm of Khazad-dûm in exchange for the return of Sauron's ring, supposedly stolen by the thief Bilbo Baggins. After this, the Dwarven rings would fall out of the history of Middle-earth and are lost forever in mystery. Finally, after the Dark Lord's downfall, we see great realms of the dwarves continue into the Fourth Age, unburdened by the presence of a Ring of Power. In Erebor, Dain's son, Thorin Stonehelm, would rule as king under the mountain.
Right.
Meanwhile, Gimli, son of Glóin, would lead a group of dwarves from their home to found the realm of Aglarond in the glittering caves behind Helm's Deep. As Galadriel predicted, gold would flow through Gimli's hands, yet over him, unlike many kings before, gold would have no dominion. Now we turn to the final set of rings distributed by Sauron, 9 for mortal men doomed to die. The 9 rings share the same origin as the 7 of the dwarves. They were made in Eregion by the Gwaith y Myrdain, the elven smiths under their lord Celebrimbor. Unlike the later 3 rings of the elves, the 9 are made with Sauron's help, binding them even more to his one ring. Despite being in a vault in Eregion as Sauron creates the One Ring around 1600 of the Second Age, the 9 would fall into the Dark Lord's hands. In 1697, when Sauron sacks the realm and kills Celebrimbor, he claims the 9 rings, along with those that would go to the dwarves. Sometime in the next 500 years, presumably after 1701 when he is driven out of Eriador, Sauron would give these 9 rings to great men in Middle-earth, tempted by his power. We know that 3 of the 9 men were lords of Númenor. For one other, we are given an actual name, Khamûl the Easterling. Where the other 5 came from, we can only guess. We are told the Rings of Power gave their wearers powerful magical abilities, and the ability to influence people's will. For these men, it gave to them very long life, and in their day they would become mighty kings, sorcerers, and warriors. However, the cost of trusting Sauron would come due. Over time, they begin to see things of the unseen, a world where both good and evil spiritual beings existed,
That'd be scary.
whether they appeared in the physical world or not. Their bodily forms fade until they become wraiths entirely, living within the unseen world, slaves under the domination of Sauron's One Ring. In 2251 of the Second Age, as Númenor becomes divided between 2 opposing factions, these 9 men first appear in Middle-earth as the Nazgûl, the black speech word for ring wraiths. While we know the Nazgûl would first appear in 2251, we know not where or what they did. In fact, their deeds during the Dark Years, Sauron's time in Númenor, and the War of the Last Alliance are entirely unknown. What we do know is that when Sauron is defeated in 3441 by the Last Alliance, the 9 fade into the shadows for over 1,000 years. Now I go more in depth into the ring wraiths and their actions in 2 previous videos, so we'll primarily stick to the actions involving their rings here. But check out those videos if you're interested in their travels and the Angmar Wars of the Witch King. Speaking of Angmar, it is around 1300 of the Third Age when Sauron's presence in Dol Guldur brings about evil things in the Misty Mountains. It is also during this time that the Nazgul reappear in Middle-earth, and their leader gathers evil men to him in the north, founding the Witch Kingdom of Angmar, thus giving the Lord of the Nazgul his well-known name. It's entirely possible that the Witch King's Ring of Power aided him in drawing followers to his realm in order to attack and destroy the realm of Arnor. But this brings up another common debate regarding the 9 Rings of Power. Who was it that actually possessed them? The Wraiths themselves or Sauron? There seem to be conflicting accounts when it comes to the possession of the 9. In the chapter The Council of Elrond in the Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf, when talking...
I would have to assume that the Nazgul themselves would each probably possess the ring, right? Not Sauron. I would assume, but maybe I'm incorrect. Let's see what he has to say.
The chapter The Council of Elrond in the Fellowship of the Ring, Gandalf, when talking of the Rings of Power, says the 9 the Nazgul keep, seeming to imply that the ring wraiths still possess their rings.
Yeah.
However, in other places, we are led to believe that Sauron had taken the 9 rings himself, possibly to augment his own power in his attempted return in the later Third Age. We know that Frodo does not see any rings on the Nazgul at Weathertop, and it's entirely logical that the rings would still have tremendous effect over the 9, even when not in their possession. As we see with Gollum, a ring of power can have a great hold over people, despite them not possessing it. And it is likely that the Wraiths possessed their rings for well over 4 times as long as Gollum possessed the one. It was well over 2,200 years, and possibly over 4,000, compared to Gollum's 500. We know that the Wraiths certainly would not have needed their rings in order to be invisible. It is only due to their wearing of silver hauberks and black cloaks that they are visible to those in the seen world. They shed these during the attack on Osgiliath, which masks their crossing of the river Anduin in order to search for the One Ring. Surrounding the Nazgul is also an aura of terror, as we hear many times of the effect that they have on those around them, even those that cannot see them. As Tolkien once wrote in a letter, they have no great physical power against the fearless, but what they have, and the fear that they inspire, is enormously increased in darkness. Another unique weapon given to the ring wraiths is called the Black Breath. It is a foul and poisonous effect that people would fall under who had close contact with one of the Nazgul. In the books, we see this occur to Merry twice, once in Bree and also alongside Éowyn in their battle with the Witch King. Faramir would also fall under the Black Breath when he is grievously wounded. All 3 would be healed by Aragorn in the Houses of Healing, fulfilling the prophecy, when the Black Breath blows, and death's shadow grows, and all lights pass, come Ethelas, come Ethelas. Life to the dying, in the king's hand lying. The Nazgul, having been drawn into the unseen world by their rings of power, had poor vision in the material world, but they were keenly aware of beings who also existed in the unseen. This would include beings such as Gandalf and Glorfindel, but also mortals wearing the One Ring, meaning that when Frodo puts on the One Ring at Weathertop, it actually makes it much easier for the Nazgul to see him.
Yeah.
Frodo, along with those existing in the unseen, could view the Nazgul as they appeared as men, the pale forms of the sorcerers and rulers they once were. As we know, the One Ring would be unmade, and the fortress of Barad-dûr would be destroyed as a result. Whether in the destruction of Barad-dûr or in the eruption of Mount Doom with their wearers, the 9 Rings of Power would be destroyed as well. While it doesn't mention this in The Lord of the Rings, the final chapter of the Silmarillion tells us, the 1 and the 7 and the 9 are destroyed, and the 3 have passed away, and with them the Third Age is ended. Finally, we turn to the greatest of rings, the ruling ring, as we conclude this compilation with the One Ring. Around 16...
I gotta say, it's been great so far. I've been enjoying this so far. And to see like what they do for each different race too, I had no idea, you know, like you hear about them, but you don't really know. I knew that the ones for men obviously turned them into Nazgul, but to actually know the effects that it had over time on them, the ability to influence people, that was very interesting to know. But the extra plot for like the dwarf and like the elven rings, I had no idea about any of those, so it was very, very cool to get some extra context. But now we're on to the One Ring, and I have to say too, outside of what we've heard, yeah, I don't really know what's different about it. I guess one ring to rule them all, obviously, but we're gonna see how goated it truly is here.
1800 of the Second Age, Sauron has made his way back to Mordor. Traveling to the volcanic Mount Doom, the Dark Lord forges his master ring in the fires of the mountain. Sauron places his own will and power into his ring. As Sauron first wields his ring, Celebrimbor and the elven ring-bearers in Eregion were instantly aware of Sauron's treachery, and Sauron knew where they were. The elves quickly remove their rings. The three, which had been made without Sauron's help, are sent to Gil-galad and Galadriel for safekeeping, while the remaining rings are kept in a vault in the city. Sauron builds up his armies and makes war upon the elves of Eriador in 1693. He destroys Eregion, kills Celebrimbor, and claims the 16 Rings of Power.
That's right.
Though he would eventually be driven from Eriador, and the 3 would remain lost to him, Sauron distributes the 7 and the 9 among dwarves and men. The 7 help their dwarven bearers to amass great wealth, and the 9 men are given long lives and become great rulers, warriors, and sorcerers. During the Dark Years, when Sauron had conquered or devastated much of the lands of Middle-earth, he builds the great tower and fortress of Barad-dûr, not far from Mount Doom. In addition, he constructs the Black Gate in an effort to prevent invasion into his lands. Sauron also builds up his armies.
God damn, that looks cool.
Trolls, and men. In this, we see 2 great abilities of the One Ring, likely serving the Dark Lord in his efforts. We know that like all rings of power, the one enhances the natural powers of its bearer. It is also said that a person bearing the One Ring could more easily dominate and command others. This no doubt proved useful to Sauron, who was already a master at manipulation in building his armies of men. We also see that much like the 3 elven rings, the one gives the power to slow the decays of the world. Like Galadriel keeping Lorien fair beyond belief, Sauron would tie the very construction of Barad-dûr itself to the One Ring. The One Ring also allows Sauron to control the 9 rings of the men, corrupting them, fading them into the unseen world, and transforming them into the Nazgul, slaves under the domination of his master ring. While no doubt it was his intention to also enslave the 7 dwarf lords, their natural resistance against the domination of others saved them from this fate. Instead, their massive treasuries would attract the attention of the dragons, which would still work in Sauron's favor. With Sauron at his greatest might to date, he proclaims himself Lord of the Earth and King of Men, offending the arrogant Númenóreans, who themselves had been turning to darkness for centuries. In 3262 of the Second Age, their king, Ar-Pharazôn, lands a mighty fleet at Umbar and marches to confront the Dark Lord. Fearing the Númenóreans, Sauron's forces flee, and the Dark Lord takes a new tactic, surrendering to Ar-Pharazôn so he may corrupt Númenor from within. During his time in Númenor, Sauron becomes the chief counselor of the king and leads the realm to its destruction.
Like,
with Sauron's body being destroyed.
Imagine like your enemy like surrenders to you, you take his surrender up, and then he just corrupts you. Like, what the fuck, dude?
And leads the realm to its destruction. With Sauron's body being destroyed in the downfall, it brings up a rather large question. Did Sauron have the One Ring during his time in Númenor? Tolkien seems to clear that up himself in letter 211. He naturally had the One Ring, and so very soon dominated the minds and wills of most of the Númenóreans. I do not think Ar-Pharazôn knew anything about the One Ring. The elves kept the matter of the rings very secret, as long as they could. In any case, Ar-Pharazôn was not in communication with them. Many who would assume Sauron did not have the ring point to Sauron's body being destroyed, as a reason he mustn't have had the ring with him. In the same letter, Tolkien addresses this as well. Though reduced to a spirit of hatred born on a dark wind, I do not think one need boggle at this spirit carrying off the One Ring, upon which his power of dominating minds now largely depended. With his body destroyed, Sauron makes his way back to Mordor, where he would regain his form and his power. Over the coming centuries, Sauron would attack the new realm of Gondor, founded by the surviving Númenóreans, for whom he held a deep hatred.
Of course he did.
When Isildur is driven from Minas Ithil, he flees to his father's kingdom of Arnor. There, Elendil and Gil-galad form the last alliance in order to take the fight to Sauron. These massive forces meet upon the field of battle, and after a 7-year siege of Barad-dûr, Sauron himself comes forth, driving the alliance back in 3441. There, upon the slopes of Mount Doom, Gil-galad and Elendil fight Sauron face to face. Both are killed by the Dark Lord,
Jesus.
though Sauron himself would also be thrown down.
That's crazy to see.
Isildur approaches the fallen body of Sauron and cuts the One Ring from his finger, separating the Dark Lord from his greatest weapon. Sauron's spirit flees and would go into hiding for 1,000 years. Isildur takes the One Ring in recompense for his fallen father and brother, declaring it an heirloom of his house, going against the advice of Elrond and Círdan that it should be destroyed in Orodruin. Gandalf would later read Isildur's account.
Again, hindsight's a bitch, I guess. Like, we just killed him, we just put him down. But yeah, he could have finished all that right then, right there. Like, he was done for, you know what I mean? Like, Sauron was gone. He was powerless at that point. Fucking just volcano that shit, you know? He should have been done with it. Should have rid his hands, washed it clean, you know?
That it should be destroyed in Orodruin. Gandalf would later read Isildur's account of claiming the One Ring. It was hot when I first took it, hot as a gleed, and my hand was scorched, so that I doubt if ever again I shall be free of the pain of it. Yet even as I write it is cooled, and it seemeth to shrink, though it loseth neither its beauty nor its shape. Already the writing upon it, which at first was as clear as red flame, fadeth, and is now only barely to be read. It is fashioned in an elven script of Eregion, for they have no letters in Mordor for such subtle work. But the language is unknown to me. I deem it to be a tongue of the Black Land, since it is foul and uncouth. What evil it saith I do not know, but I trace here a copy of it, lest it fade beyond recall. The ring misseth, maybe, the heat of Sauron's hand, which was black and yet burned like fire, and so Gil-galad was destroyed. And maybe were the gold made hot again, the writing would be refreshed. With Sauron defeated, his dark tower of Barad-dûr would be leveled. However, having been created with the power of the One Ring, its foundations could not be destroyed so long as the ring remained. As Gondorians proceed to man the Black Gate in an attempt to guard against Sauron's return to Mordor, Isildur returns to Gondor to instruct his nephew on the ruling of the Southern Kingdom. In the second year of the Third Age, Isildur makes his way north toward Rivendell to reunite with his wife and youngest child, and to take his place as King of Arnor. As is his custom, he bears the One Ring around his neck, for it is implied that it has become physically painful for Isildur to wear the ring. The ring itself draws orcs to Isildur's location, mysteriously drawing the servants of the enemy toward itself. Isildur and his company are attacked in the disaster of the Gladden Fields. His men and his 3 eldest sons are killed in the ensuing battle.
Jesus.
And Isildur, using the One Ring,
crazy
is
to
able
lose.
to escape, jumping into the river in an attempt to swim to the other side. In the struggle across the mighty river, the One Ring intentionally slips off his finger. At first, Isildur feels an immense sense of loss, and may very well have drowned, as in his shock he stops struggling against the clinging weeds of the Anduin. But as quickly as it had come, the feeling passed, The pain had left him, and with an overwhelming feeling of a great burden being taken away, he pulls himself up out of the mud. However, his appearance alarms a group of orcs nearby, and they shoot him with arrows as they flee. And the ring's malice claims the life of its second bearer. While Saruman would later claim that during the
Interesting. So that's how it gets into the. Okay, that's really cool. I never knew the backstory behind that. That's really, really interesting. And it's sad too. Like, he literally lost it. Everyone died. Like, his sons died. Everyone died. His army died. His escort, you know, he loses it in the river. Immediately feels the relief of it leaving him. He's like, comes to, sucks in that last breath of air, and the orcs just fucking shoot him dead on the spot there. That's crazy, man. And then it's in the river, and, you know, I guess Gollum later finds it, right? That's how it happens. Damn.
Claims the life of its second bearer. While Saruman would later claim that during this time, the ring is washed out to sea, for over 2,000 years, the One Ring lies in the riverbed of the mighty Anduin. In 2463, 2 Stour hobbits are at the river, one nosing about the banks while the other is fishing. Deagle, the one fishing in his boat, is pulled in by a great fish, where he finds a shining object in the riverbed.
I see.
There in his hand lay a beautiful golden ring,
Hobbits.
And it shone and glittered in the sun, so that his heart was glad. But Smeagol had been watching him from behind a tree.
Smeagol.
And as Deagle gloated over the ring, Smeagol came softly up behind. And he caught Deagle by the throat and strangled him, because the gold looked so bright and beautiful. Then he put the ring on his finger. No one ever found out what had become of Deagle. He was murdered far from home, and his body was cunningly hidden. But Smeagol returned alone, and he found that none of his family could see him when he was wearing the ring. However, he would soon be driven out by his family, and the ring drives him to settle deep in the misty mountains, not far from both a colony of orcs and also staying in the same part of the world as Sauron's re-emergence in Dol Guldur. And here we see the effects of the One Ring over centuries of possession, and our first clue of the natural resilience of hobbits. Unlike the men who would gradually be pulled into the Wraith world, Gollum would not suffer this same fate, despite possessing the ring for nearly 500 years. It would, however, change him greatly physically.
Yeah,
as
he looks like a fucking
far
rat.
Beyond the natural lifespan of any halfling.
Yeah.
As Sauron grows stronger in Dol Guldur, his dark thoughts turn to the ring, and as if in answer to its master, the One Ring slips from Gollum's finger as he returns to his cave after hunting a goblin in 2941. The ring wishes to be discovered by a new bearer, likely intending to be captured by one of the nearby goblins, and more easily finding its way back to its master. Instead, it is picked up by Bilbo Baggins, who would use its power of invisibility many times throughout the rest of his quest with Thorin's company. Even with the ring in his possession for a relatively short time, Bilbo's first instinct is to keep it secret from both Gandalf and the dwarves. Though they would all soon be told of Bilbo's ring, Gandalf would assume it to be one of the lesser rings created before the Rings of Power, which Gandalf calls mere essays in the craft. It is in 3001 of the Third Age, as Bilbo is celebrating his 111th birthday, that his relationship with the ring would reach its most critical juncture. He has seemingly not aged in the past 60 years, and is as obsessed with the ring as ever. His mind is often preoccupied with it, not wanting to keep it anywhere than on his person.
Interesting that he hasn't aged. I didn't catch on to that fact. And in the movies, you definitely, like, he looks older, right? Like, he definitely seems like he's older, at least. Crazy he didn't age. Okay, damn. That's telling. That's pretty fucking sus.
Not wanting to keep it anywhere than on his person, frequently feeling a desire to use it, and at times feeling like an eye was watching him. Despite his hesitancy, Gandalf convinces his friend to leave the ring behind, and for the first time, the One Ring is willingly given up by its bearer. This was a crucial point. Whereas Bilbo is mostly able to go on with his life in Rivendell, Gollum had spent the previous years hunting for his precious, and the Hobbit who took it. Gandalf, having grown suspicious of Bilbo's behavior toward the ring, travels to Minas Tirith, where he finds the scroll of Isildur and learns the details of the One Ring. Returning to Hobbiton 17 years after the long-expected party, Gandalf throws Frodo's ring into the fire, much to the chagrin of its owner. The heat reveals lines of fire in a flowing script, and while Gandalf would not speak its words at that time, we later learn that it reads, Ajnaj Durbatuluk, Ajnaj Gimpatul, Ajnaj Trakatuluk, Agburzumishi Kripatul. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Not only was this confirmed to be the One Ring, but by this time Barad-dûr had been rebuilt in Mordor, and Sauron had already begun his war for the ring. Gandalf tells Frodo to make for Rivendell, where the wise could decide how best to proceed. It is also in this moment that we see Gandalf's fear of and great restraint regarding the One Ring. He knows that should he agree to take it himself, it would corrupt him entirely. As explained in my What If Gandalf Took the Ring video, and laid out in Tolkien's own letters.
That's crazy. That's fucking crazy. We're looking at like an evil Gandalf here. He gets corrupted by the One Ring, and he's straight up, he looks at that shit, he's like, no, that's like crack. I can't take that. You know what I mean? That's straight up. That's crazy. At least he had the foresight, like Gandalf had the foresight to know better and not take that shit, because he's like, no, if I do that, I'm cooked. Like there's no way that doesn't fuck me up. Damn.
My What If Gandalf Took the Ring video, and laid out in Tolkien's own letters, Gandalf is one of the few powerful enough to truly become master of Sauron's ring, and overthrow him with it. Fortunately, he leaves the task with Frodo, who over the coming weeks would succeed in getting it to Rivendell. On their journey, another being would briefly wear the One Ring. As the hobbits make their way through the old forest and come to the house of Tom Bombadil, Frodo lets him see the ring. The ring has no effect on the mysterious Bombadil. When he places it on his finger, he does not disappear, and Tom is not tempted by the power of the One in any way. Though Gandalf had warned him not to, Frodo would wear the ring multiple times on his journey. The most notable of the early occasions comes at Weathertop, where he is tempted by the ring so that he could evade the ring wraiths. However, we see here that what most perceive as invisibility, in fact, is the ring's ability to make that person appear in the unseen world. Since the wraiths themselves exist primarily in the unseen world, this has the opposite effect, and Frodo is even easier to see. As for the previously mentioned real-world invisibility, it should be noted that when men, as well as hobbits, wear the One Ring, they are not 100% indiscernible. One could see their faint and shaky shadow, but only in the full light of the sun. While not technically complete invisibility, it certainly was nearly complete. Frodo would of course come to Rivendell, where the Council of Elrond would debate what to do with Isildur's Bane. After Boromir suggests...
So invisibility, is that ethereal in a sense, or is it only invisibility? Like if you were to reach out and touch somebody wearing the One Ring, like you're able to grab them, like hold them kind of thing, like hit them back, you know? They're not just like ethereal in the sense of like your hand's gonna go fucking through them or something like that, right? How does that work? I'd actually be curious to know that. Somebody let me know.
Elrond would debate what to do with Isildur's Bane. After Boromir suggests giving the ring to Gondor, other ideas include giving it to Tom Bombadil or sending it across the sea to the Valar. However, in the end, it is determined that the ring cannot be used, hidden, or otherwise disposed of in any way. Their only feasible choice, though a long shot, is to take the One Ring to Mount Doom so that it may be truly destroyed. When it came to the decision of who would bear the burden, Bilbo offers to finish the job he had started. However, Gandalf tells him that not only are Bilbo's adventuring days done, but that he could not possibly take back the ring after having possessed it for so long. In the end, Frodo volunteers, and the Fellowship departs Rivendell on December 25th, 3018. The ring goes south, and after a failed attempt to pass Caradhras, the Fellowship passes through Moria, where Gandalf falls with the Balrog to the depths of the mountain. Led by Aragorn, they travel onward to Lorien, where Frodo would offer the One Ring to Galadriel. While tempted, she, like Gandalf, would pass on this offer, knowing that she would become both great and terrible. The following day, the ring departs Lorien as the Fellowship makes their way down the Anduin River. After traveling for 9 days, they pass the Argonath and camp at Parth Galen. The Fellowship would break the following day, and Frodo puts on the One Ring after Boromir attempts to take it by force. Retreating to Amon Hen, the Hill of Sight, and still wearing the ring, Frodo sees signs of war wherever he looks. Finally, his gaze comes to the Dark Tower of Barad-dûr, where he feels the presence of the Eye. Not a giant flaming eyeball, but the unceasing vigilance of Sauron himself. And suddenly he felt the Eye. There was an eye in the Dark Tower that did not sleep. He knew that it had become aware of his gaze. A fierce, eager will was there. It leaped towards him. Almost like a finger, he felt it, searching for him. Very soon it would nail him down, know just exactly where he was. Amon Law it touched. It gazed upon Tol Brandir. He threw himself from the seat, crouching, covering his head with his gray hood. Frodo would hear a second, mysterious voice, striving against the Dark Lord and telling Frodo to take off the ring, which he does. Little does Frodo realize, but this voice is none other than a resurrected Gandalf, who lies upon Celebdil. As we know, Frodo would bear the ring over the coming weeks through the Emyn Muil, where they meet Gollum and he swears himself to their service. In Gollum, Frodo sees what could become of himself and feels a bond with the wretched creature. The trio goes to the Black Gate before heading south through Ithilien. There they meet Boromir's brother, Faramir. After discovering the true purpose for the hobbits being in Gondorian territory, Faramir does what few have done before him. There at the Forbidden Pool, he rejects the temptation of the One Ring. He sends the three on their way as they make for the pass of Cirith Ungol, crossing into...
It seems pretty, lucky in a sense. Like, everyone they're coming across is rejecting this ring. They don't want it because they know what the fuck it can do. They saw what it's done to the previous owners. They're like, nah, this is your burden to bear, Hobbit. Keep on it. You know what I mean? And the Hobbits seem to be the only ones, in a sense, pure of heart enough to be able to resist it in that sense, to stay focused on that in a sense. I feel like, again, if Gandalf took it, if Galadriel took it, if any of these humans took it, they would have been tempted too much, you know what I mean? Instantly, and it just wouldn't have worked.
On their way as they make for the pass of Cirith Ungol, crossing into Mordor near the Witch King's city of Minas Morgul. As they climb to reach the pass, they witness the forces of Mordor marching to war. The rider halted suddenly, right before the entrance of the bridge, and behind him all the host stood still. Maybe it was the ring that called to the Wraith Lord, and for a moment he was troubled, sensing some other power within his valley. Frodo felt the command that he should put on the ring, but great as the pressure was, he knew the ring would only betray him. He sighed and bent his head. At that moment, the Wraith King turned and spurred his horse and rode across the bridge, and all his dark host followed him. While obviously not knowing it was the One Ring itself, the Witch King ignores this mysterious power in his land and carries on with the task at hand, his master's siege upon Minas Tirith. Frodo and Sam are betrayed by Gollum, who has once again fallen to the temptation of his precious.
Crazy.
After Frodo is bitten by Shelob and assumed dead, Samwise becomes the last new ring bearer of the One. He carries it for roughly 2 days as he works to free Frodo from the Tower of Cirith Ungol. As all who come across it, the One Ring tempts the humble gardener. As he stood there, even though the ring was not on him, but hanging by its chain about his neck, he felt himself enlarged, as if he were robed in a huge distorted shadow of himself, and vast, an ominous threat halted upon the walls of Mordor. Wild fantasies arose in his mind, and he saw Samwise the Strong, hero of the age, striding with a flaming sword across the darkened land.
Jesus.
And armies flocking to his call as he marched to the overthrow of Barad-dûr.
Oh my
He
God.
had only to put on the ring and claim it for his own, and all this could be. Sam shakes off this temptation and resolves to save Frodo from the orcs, which he does, giving the ring back to Frodo. After their escape from Cirith Ungol, they make their way across the plains of Gorgoroth, finally arriving at Mount Doom. It is there upon the slopes that Frodo reaches a point where he can go no further of his own strength. And the ring has too strong a hold upon him to allow Sam to carry it for him. Thus, Samwise the Brave carries his master up the mountain. There they are attacked by Gollum, who is repelled by Frodo and shown mercy by Sam. Here we see an example of the apparent ability of the ring to grow stronger within the lands of its forging. For when Frodo and Sam are attacked by Gollum, Frodo grabs the ring, without even placing it on his finger, and appears as a figure robed in white, holding a wheel of fire.
Jesus.
Similarly, as Sam was searching for Frodo in Cirith Ungol, he appeared to the orc as a powerful warrior cloaked in shadow, holding some nameless menace of power and doom. These are dramatic and powerful depictions of our humble Hobbit heroes. It makes you realize how incredible it would have been to witness Sauron himself wielding the One Ring in his own lands. Finally, on the brink of the chasm at the very crack of Mount Doom, Frodo comes to the end. "I have come," he said, "but I do not choose now to do what I came to do. I will not do this deed. The ring is mine."
My
And
God.
suddenly, as he set it on his finger, he vanished from Sam's sight. And far away, as Frodo put on the ring and claimed it for his own, even in the Samath Naur, the very heart of his realm, the power in Barad-dûr was shaken. The Dark Lord was suddenly aware of him. Sauron sends his ring wraiths in a last-ditch effort to reclaim the One Ring. But Gollum had leaped upon Frodo, biting off his finger and finally being reunited with his precious. In his celebration, Gollum slips and falls into the fires below. The One Ring, the source of so much death.
So Frodo actually almost loses himself there, and Gollum takes his finger off and fucking yeets himself into the fire all in one convenient motion. Damn, dude.
Into the fires
damn.
below. The One Ring, the source of so much death and suffering over 2 ages of the world, is destroyed. Barad-dûr, whose foundations were built with the power of the One, collapses. As for Sauron, he is finally defeated. While not entirely destroyed, he is permanently disembodied, unable to ever again take physical form or influence the people and events of the world. From Sauron, the peoples of Middle-earth are finally free. As always, I want to say a huge thank you to all my Patreon and YouTube supporters who make this channel possible. Tom DeBombadil19,
Very
Listening
nice.
to Cinda, Rabbi Rob Thomas, Charles Leisure, CCDC on Nerd of the Rings.
That was awesome, guys. That was, I think there's just an intro there. I don't think there is, after the intro there, anything else is there?
Check out the artists in the description.
No, okay. That was awesome, guys. That was the complete history of the Rings of Power by Nerd of the Rings, guys. Big thank you to our Prefect Fyr for that recommendation, of course. And yeah, I thought that was awesome to check out. It was very cool to see just how they were created, just what exactly they do to each of the races too, and to know that, like, I guess the hobbits in a sense are like the only ones that can really manage it for a length of time. They're resilient enough to be able to manage that, where every other race seems to succumb in one way or another. I guess except the dwarves, but the dwarves still have the byproduct of gaining too much wealth to the point where it becomes a problem for them, right? No, I thought that was a great video. If you guys enjoyed, make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe for more content from me. Of course, leave recommendations down in the comments below. A big thank you to all of our members, all of our Hastati, our Triarii, our Principe, Dagenhart, and of course our Prefect Fyr and Hobbit. I appreciate you guys. You guys inspire me to make more content for you guys every single day. And without any further delay, guys, this has been Centurion, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace, guys.